Welcome to episode 10 of the Imperial Tides podcast. I'm your host, Holden, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Simone. How are you doing today, Simone?
Good.
It's good. Before we start getting into Hamlet, I was going to say Hamlet, Macbeth. Before we get into Macbeth, I'd just like to say that, at this point in our exploration of the original Shakespearean works, I'm starting to feel as if everything in art and literature feels connected to Shakespeare. Don't you think? Do you know what I'm trying to say? Do you know what I mean? I'm starting to feel that, especially with this one, Macbeth. I can't really articulate as to why I feel this way, but there are a lot of turns of phrases and idioms and quote-worthy things in all of the plays that we've seen up till this point, but the connection seems more significant than that. There's something more fundamental going on, and it might have to do with the structure of the stories themselves, or maybe Shakespeare's approach to the various aspects of the human condition. I'm not entirely sure yet, but I feel as if Shakespeare really is everything, and I really that hit me halfway through watching Macbeth. Do you have any thoughts on that, Simone?
I agree with you that this one is the hardest one that we encounter to understand. I guess that maybe it's the one that really sounds Shakespeare, that it's really connected to other forms of literature, and yeah, that's it. That this one is really hard. I guess that this one really is Shakespeare. Made us realize that things when it comes to literature or art, Shakespeare is really related to things. So this one is really a hard one to understand. We need to exert some efforts to get this one. I guess it's hard to articulate.
Right. Yeah. So, I can't remember exactly. I don't know exactly what year the one we watched was from. Oh, 2014. Okay, so we watched the adaptation we watched of Macbeth was the 2014 Globe Theater production. And let me just ask you this, Simone, right off the bat. What would you rate this particular production of Macbeth, and why? And when you answer this, please include the technical aspects as a consideration for your rating.
Uh, I'll give it an 8.5 or 9, I guess. Maybe because the actors are really great, but the space, the stage that where this play took place, I guess that it limits the actor and actresses on what they will, the possibility that they can do. That they are capable more of uh, um, embodying or living or portraying the play, but I guess the place, the stage that they were set in, I guess that it really limits them, I guess. But they really did a good job, that even though it's a small space, they did a good job that portraying each lines, with the costumes. They really live each characters, I guess that, I can really feel it, the elements of play in this one.
So you're saying that the physical size of the stage itself kept you from immersing yourself into the story as much as you would have liked to. It hampered the immersiveness for you.
Yeah, I guess, but yeah, and they are more capable of things. I guess that the stage just limit them on what they can do, or the other possibilities that they are capable of. But I guess it's also their strength. I guess that they've never been bothered by the audience. They didn't show any. They didn't even distract at any chances. I guess that even though the audience is right in front of them, it's just a few inches between them. So the show go on. I guess that, and they really did a good job regarding that matter.
And what exactly is it about the size of the stage that bothers you? You know, why is it that because it's small, you couldn't get into it as much as you could have if it was perhaps bigger? Why exactly?
Um, um, it's just when the stage is much bigger, they will be able to deliver each line more finer. I guess that it's bother me the audience. I guess that they're just right in front of the actors. It didn't it just it didn't give that much a chance for the actors or actresses to do their part. I guess that it's really small. That they can't move that much on the stage. I guess that to feel each line that they're delivering or each part. I guess that the audience is really right in front of them. So it just bothered me.
And uh, and so then going off that, what would you rate the original play and why? Not the production, but the play itself.
I rate the original, but I guess it's a 10 out of 10. I guess that this one is it's close to Hamlet. Hamlet, I rated a 10 out of 10, and this one is not exactly. It's this one is much more needed much more time or attention than Hamlet. I guess that we need to articulate more in this one. So this one is really what I wanted to. This is what really comes to my mind when I heard of Shakespeare works. That this soliloquy, I guess that's what I'm really looking for, and this one is really have that aspect. So that's why I like it.
So this one for you is you would say the iconic Shakespeare play.
Yes, yeah. So far from the from the play that we've seen, this one is uh the the really Shakespeare one.
And is this one more iconic or less iconic than Hamlet?
It's iconic in its own way, I guess. Each Shakespeare play has their own. They're unique from each other, I guess. That they have their own identity. That's how I see it.
Okay, okay, interesting, and I would agree with that as well. Um, as far as I would rate this production of Macbeth, I would give it an 8 out of 10. I really liked the interactivity of the overall setup. For me, that was a big deal because, and I think that comes from the more traditional way of presenting theater, especially back in Shakespeare's day. You would have the audience interacting with the actors, well, the actors interacting with the audience to make it more engaging. And I really felt that it was very traditional in that sense. And it's a shame that I could only experience that secondhand because I wasn't, not being a part of the physical audience, just watching it on YouTube. But still, I got a little bit of that anyway. Some of it managed to kind of filter through, and I really enjoyed it. It woke me up to it a little more than some of the other plays did because they just didn't have that engaging interactivity to them. The stage and the set pieces for me, they were all quite nice. The costume design, the props, the music, all very solid for me. Casting, though, that's the one thing that was a bit odd at times, especially with regard to Lady Macbeth. She didn't really, I guess she just didn't really fit the bill that I'm used to seeing in classical paintings of the play. I have this idea of her as kind of like a paler, maybe redheaded, Scottish woman or something like that. Not what they decided to go with, but that's it's whatever. I mean, she still did a good job. So as long as the acting is fine, I don't really mind it at all. I that's not how I would imagine it to be in my head. But Macbeth though, Macbeth was the guy playing him was perfect. Honestly, he had a very, even though Macbeth isn't really a good guy, he had that heroic look to him, if that makes sense. I kind of looked at him and in his costume and everything, it inspired awe. It was awe inspiring. As dramatic as that may sound, exaggerated and whatnot, he just kind of fits the bill for a typical kind of classical like romantic hero, like Macbeth and Hamlet and all of these Shakespearean protagonists are kind of supposed to be, at least some of them. And he really nailed that. I don't know exactly what it is about him, but it worked. The beard, the hair, and everything. It just and the height and all that, the stature, the physical stock or whatever. It all worked out for me, and I thought that was worth noting because it stood out to me among the other elements of the production. But all in all, it was a very well put together production. I just think personally that the problem with Macbeth as a play itself is that it's best appreciated on its own. Without any sort of adaptation, I think the medium of the actors and the particular, like the vision of the person, the people working behind it, they kind of get in the way of the breadth of meaning that lies within the base work itself, if you know what I mean. You don't need any middlemen when it comes to Macbeth. It's the kind of play that you should take it in on your own. Read it, silently to yourself through the late hours of the night. It's a very introspective play in that regard, and I feel like to adapt it is to take that aspect of it away a little bit, to water it down, to diminish it somewhat, somehow. As far as the original play goes, I would give it a 9 out of 10, and that's just because reading about it afterwards, doing a little bit of research into it, it definitely helped me appreciate it more than seeing a stage production of it did. And I'm sure, I'm sure there have been great productions of it, but I still feel as though even the best of them wouldn't be able to do it justice the way that the core writing itself does. This is a story all about a man sinking into the depths of the hell of his own design, of his own creation. We are taken through each step of the deconstruction of the psychological and spiritual aspects of his character. It's not the kind of thing that adaptation would help, I don't think, but instead always hinder, perhaps. I think it would always get in the way. I just don't think it would be beneficial, conducive to telling that particular kind of story. I think it's something that is very intimate and very psychologically driven, and that's something that in order to do that, you need to kind of enter the consciousness of the character himself, and the best way to do that is through direct communication, through just sitting there silent reading the work by yourself, and in a space where you can just fully concentrate on that and nothing but that. There's no distraction of the audience, no distraction of the particular vision of the particular production or anything like that. The physicality of adaptation kind of gets in the way. It mars the introspective aspect of the original work, I feel. But then again, that's just my opinion. And maybe it'll change if I end up coming across a better production, perhaps, or a different production, because I don't think this production necessarily had anything wrong with it. I just think it was, well, in terms of whether or not I would recommend it to other people, well, and I forgot to ask you that, so I'll ask you that after, Simone. But in terms of whether or not I would recommend this particular 2014 Globe production of Macbeth to other people, I would say probably not. Not if you're just getting into Shakespeare. This isn't a good introduction. This is the kind of thing that you should only watch if you're really into theater and Shakespeare coming in. I would say find a movie or a TV version adaptation instead, because this production's nice, but it's just not a good place to start. It's the kind of production you come to after you've already covered Macbeth on your own time, I guess. It isn't the first Macbeth you should go with. I don't think it will necessarily ingratiate you to it. It being the original play, that is. So, yeah, Simone, would you recommend this particular production to other people?
Yeah, I will recommend it, but it shouldn't be the first one. I guess that I will recommend. I guess that if you're getting into it's your first time to get exposed to Shakespeare, this one is not a good introduction. You will only appreciate this one if you find a different material. Like I said, I don't know. I didn't. Maybe this one could be. We can appreciate Macbeth in a different adaptation. I guess that I don't know. This one will not. It's not a good introduction. Maybe find a different movie adaptation. Um. Yeah, that's it. That I don't know that Shakespeare plays are great, but the adaptation, the play adaptation itself, maybe is not a good introduction, I guess, to get into Shakespeare. Maybe read the material or maybe look for some movie adaptation because it will really get you into Shakespeare, I guess.
Right, exactly. So now, before we begin talking about the actual play itself, I just wanted to provide the audience with a quick summary, so that they, you have that foundation, kind of the background. You probably know it already, but just in case. So, what's this play about? Well, there's a guy named Macbeth who is a soldier, and he ends up killing Duncan, who is the king of Scotland, because he wants power. Because three witches tell him he'll be king one day, and because his wife, Lady Macbeth, kind of pushes him to do so. Macbeth becomes king, but then begins killing a bunch of other people because the act of murder makes him guilty and paranoid and increasingly unhinged over time. And he ends up becoming a tyrant who murders all those who oppose him or even risk opposing him, including women and children. In the end, he's killed by Macduff, who is the Thane of Fife, and Thanes are basically the Scottish equivalent of dukes. And then Malcolm, who is the son of Duncan, the original king, ends up becoming the new king, and that's basically it. The end. So now to start with our, examination of the actual play itself, Simone, answer me this: why do you think Shakespeare made the play so dark?
Um, I think that's what but that's what the Macbeth really make interesting. That's the point that make this play interesting. The dark part, I guess. The To get into introspection, we need to get the dark aspects. So that's what I see it, that um, it plays an important role to make us see to portray the character development, I guess. Yeah, that's it's really important. That's a major part that it plays, to be dark, to be able to see the character's development and the soliloquy that the character wanted to portray, or Shakespeare wanted to portray.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Um, and I would say that I think it's dark because, again, the story is meant to give us insight into the mind of a man who has just done the unforgivable. His mistakes are almost completely morally definite. There's not much ambiguity as to whether it's right or wrong to kill somebody else in order to, take their place in a position of power, or just because you want influence, or a good reputation, or whatever. That's not good, and I don't think Shakespeare's trying to ask us whether or not it is good. Sorry, Macbeth is, without a shadow of a doubt, guilty of I would consider them to be anyway, some of the worst things a human being can do. But at the same time, he's not necessarily a cold-blooded killer in the sense that his humanity is still present throughout the course of the play. Even towards the very end, where he has become numb to his own self-induced misery and guilt and suffering, his humanness is still there. It's still present. Macbeth isn't able to turn it off, even in the moments leading up to his death. And does that make him heroic necessarily? The fact that his guilt never lets up, the fact that he never forgets what it is he's actually done. We'll get into that more a little later, but I don't know yet. I'm not entirely sure. But now, Simone, would you say that this is more a tragedy? This play is more a tragedy of ambition or a tragedy of guilt, if you had to choose between the two, or is it both or neither?
I don't know. I think I think this one, the two, we can apply those two in this piece, I guess. But I guess that it's more on. I don't know. I think these two elements are present. I guess that the ambition, and then the tragic part. I guess that because of his ambition, I guess that it turns out to be a tragedy. So I don't know what should I decide on this part, but maybe most part is, it becomes a tragedy because of his ambitions. So that's why, this one becomes darker because of his ambition that turns out everything into tragedy. So that's how I see it.
Okay, so the tragedy of ambition leads into the tragedy of guilt, is what you're saying.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That the consequences of his actions.
Okay. Well, I would be willing to argue that it's actually more, it's definitely more a tragedy of guilt rather than a tragedy of ambition. Because from the very beginning, it doesn't seem as if Macbeth really knows what it is he wants and why. Why exactly is it that he wants the crown? Why does he want power? He doesn't seem to have a will of his own, and from the very start, it seems like he's always giving in to his wife. I think his greatest character flaw is actually his weakness of fortitude, his lack of an independent will, and there's no given point at all throughout the entire play that he self determinates. The best he can do when all's said and done is acknowledge the mess he's made, which is embodied by his tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow soliloquy, in which he muses on the futility of trying to remedy the situation he's put himself in. But other than that, it's already too late for him. It was too late for Macbeth before the play even began, I would be willing to argue. And I think that his lame attempts at resisting his need for power are obvious in the very first act. He has these... Macbeth is someone he's a character who has very strange ambitions, I would say. And he feels very guilty about these ambitions. But then becomes even guiltier after having done what he felt he needed to do in order to realize those ambitions. I think he's ashamed of his desire to be king, and he handles it in all the wrong ways. Constantly steeped in guilt and what appears to be self-hatred. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's more. We can see that he didn't know what he's doing. All he do is in the beginning is that listen to his wife. I guess that he didn't even have his own opinion or says about things. It's all about it's not he's not the one who wanted the crown. I guess it's his wife that drives him to do all these things that happen to be a bad human being, I guess, to seek help to the witches. That's how his wife is the number one, the only person, I guess, that really drives or started everything that falls into tragedy.
And why do you think he listens to her so much? Is he just a coward? Does he have no backbone? Is he just some sort of chump who he just does what everybody else tells him to? Why doesn't he make his own decisions? At any given point throughout the play. Why is he so? Why does he seem to be such a weak-willed victim of his own desires and of the desires and wills of other people? Where's the independence of character in him? Do you think? Why does he lack it?
Maybe I think that he grew accustomed to his wife. I guess that he relies on other people to get into to make a decision for his own. For example, the part where he consulted the witches. I guess that he didn't have his own opinions about things. He really depends on people to decide on his own. Maybe um, that's how he really is, or he's been dependent to people around him, that he didn't have any self opinions about things or decision makings by his own. That's how I see it. That in every part of the play, I didn't see him that making his own decisions, I guess. Um, at some parts he make his own decision, but it's affected by the opinions of other people that he's encountered. I guess that it wasn't based on his own. It's just based on the advices of someone else.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think there's any really. I don't know. I don't know if there is exactly even one example of him just being his own person. Really, the most honest and authentic and independent we see him is when he's confessing up to what he's done, when he's reflecting, when he's addressing the audience directly about his feelings about certain things and how he feels how he feels about him. He's just kind of reporting on his interior states throughout, but other than that, the only time he ever seems to take control is when he's guilty, when he's confessing. That's the only time he's ever really himself. Otherwise, he just seems to be an agent for everybody else, really, the wills of his wife, the wills of I don't know, I guess the position of, really, if you want to get abstract about it, the position of being a king and doing what it takes in order to retain your power, in order to keep the crown. Everything he does is just to really just to retain that power, to maintain what he's kind of earned, the spoils of his own little war on Duncan, who was really undeserving, because Duncan was nice to him at the beginning. Duncan liked him, and he gave him a dukedom, or a thanedom. He gave him power and stuff. He gave him a little bit, but it wasn't enough for him, apparently. And that's really where a lot of this guilt comes from. But it also seems to come from just this weird psychological, just kind of abscess, or something, some darkness that's just in him, that was in him from the very beginning. Something that's intrinsic, that has nothing really to do with any of the other things. It's just, and I don't know what exactly that is, but that's what's kind of confusing. This play is really baffling. And I guess when you try to question why it is exactly that Macbeth is evil, why is he this way? Why is he bad? It makes you question why human beings are bad. What is it about us that drives us to do this kind of thing? What is it about us that tempts us to be evil, and to kill, and to to murder, and to kill, to murder, to do all these terrible things to each other? Why is it that we are that way? Because this doesn't really seem to provide us with a clear example, rather a clear explanation. All it can really show us is what happens after. It shows us the consequences of that evil, but it doesn't show us the origin. It doesn't trace it back to the source. And that's really the confusing thing about Macbeth for me. I can't understand why he is this way. I don't know why he's evil. All I can see is what happens because of his evil. What the consequences are, what the fallout is. That's all you really get in the play. That's all Shakespeare's willing to present. And maybe he didn't question it. Maybe he's deliberately withholding it, because as a way for us to kind of philosophically ponder the issue. Question, what is evil? What is the origin of evil? Where does evil come from? Why are we evil? Maybe it's there to raise all of these questions. So I'll do that now. Simone, why do you think human beings are evil? And where do you think that evil comes from exactly?
I think that it's come from, I don't know, I can see any reason for this one, but maybe in my opinion, I guess this one, maybe we become evil when we let things happen on its own, or to let things happen, or to let other people or things decide by, or control us, or let these things happen. When we don't have control about our own decisions in life. I guess that's how really make these things evil. Again, with the time when you're not thinking about, or just thinking more, articulating about your thoughts, or thinking what would happen, or just letting things happen. So that's what makes us evil, I guess, that we're not thinking at all. So that's how I see about the character of Macbeth. Macbeth, that he didn't even think about for himself. I guess that himself, that he never has his own decisions in life, so he just let things happen for the sake of just following some advices, that's having thinking for him. So I think that's what makes us evil, I guess, to let things happen on their own, that not having control, or I guess.
So you think evil could come from inaction, inactivity, no freedom of the self, over dependence on things. So let's say, for example, you're in a country that is being run by a dictator, and instead of speaking out against that dictator and thinking for yourself and calling them out on their evil or whatever, their tyranny or whatever it is, they're a tyrant, they're a dictator. Instead of doing any of that, you listen to everything they tell you to. You obey their every command. You kind of just you fall in line. You conform. You obey. That's all you do. You don't think for yourself. Is that what you're saying? You think that's where evil comes from? Is the unwillingness of the common person to take a stand, perhaps? So it's not so much active evil as it is passivity. it's the opposite. It's passiveness. You think passiveness is the root of maybe not all evil, but some evil.
Yeah, yeah. I guess in a every in this today's reality, I guess that's one of the major thing that's one of the root of evil, I guess. But I guess that evil, the evilness of human beings, I guess it comes from the desire to get things. I guess we wanted to get things in an easier way. I guess that we're neglecting some moral values. I guess that we wanted to get there in the easiest way as possible. So maybe that's how I see Macbeth, or the reason why he's trying to for his wife that he wanted him to do, but to getting the throne for the easiest way, I guess, even though it's wrong. Maybe we wanted to get into some shortcuts to get what we desire. I guess the we let the our desires forget forget the moral values. I guess that the boundaries that we need to consider regarding some matters. So that's how I see it.
So Macbeth foregoes morality in order to get to take the most convenient, most guaranteed route to the king, the crown, the throneship. Well, the kingship, the throne, and by doing so, he comes to find that morality is actually a lot more important than he was giving it credit for. I mean, he was still racked with guilt and doubt before he even did any of it, but he still, it turns out that that's true, and it's not only true, but it's more true than he ever could have imagined. It's worse than he ever could have imagined. The fallout that comes with that, the guilt, the paranoia, the anxiety, the self-loathing, the internal misery, the hell, the self-created hell that comes from what he does, from foregoing morality to take the easy route, to have things be easier. Because I mean, he was already, you could argue that, even though he's not related to the king, even though it would have gone to Malcolm because Malcolm is in the line, he's in King Duncan's line, and he would have been he would have been crowned the next leader anyway. He was, Macbeth already had things going for himself well enough, and those were what he earned. He earned his thanedom, he earned the rank of thane through his own work, and that's something that he earned himself. He got that through hard work and his genuine individual talents. His own achievements as a soldier and everything, which is and this might be something that Shakespeare did either. This might be something Shakespeare did deliberately, or maybe it's just something he left out for the sake of the narrative because it wasn't interesting to the drama or whatever. Either way, we don't get to see Macbeth do any of that on his own. He's supposed to be this great, war hero or whatever, but we don't get to actually see him in action on the field, doing that and shining, and being, an independent hero in and of himself. We only get to see we barely get to see that at all. It's not really present in the play at all whatsoever. It's kind of on the periphery. What do you think the significance of that is, if there is any at all? Or do you think Shakespeare just kind of left it out for the sake of writing a good story? Maybe it would clutter the narrative or whatever. Or do you think there's something deeper to that?
I guess this what makes this literary piece unique is that Shakespeare's I think he has his own ideas regarding this, but he led us to have our own ideas or introspection regarding this. There's our own philosophical thoughts regarding this. I guess that he gave us the story. I guess that, but he leaves us the uh, the obligation, or I guess it's not the obligation. I guess the chance to articulate about regarding this matter. I guess that this one really needs some attention. I guess to really understand it. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have in every person that will see this one. I guess that they will come up with different ideas or opinions regarding this one. So yeah, that's how I know. Yeah.
Yeah, but why does Shakespeare focus only on the bad and not at least some of the good? Why isn't it more balanced? Why do we only get to see Macbeth, at his worst?
I guess that the focus of this one, I guess that this one is more on the dark part. The dark part, I guess, the dark parts to of the why he's really that way. I guess that he wanted us to see what really is evil is. I guess that that's how I see Macbeth, that he's suffering through all of what he's done. Yeah, that he wanted us to see the what is the meaning of what is to give us a perspective about evil. I guess that's how I see it. That he gives us the chance to think about the evil. I guess he has some pieces, I guess, that focus on the good ones, but this one just focus on the bad one because to be able to absorb this one, to think more about this, to get into this one, to make this one interesting, he focuses on the dark parts.
So to be able to allow the viewer to use the play as a platform or a vehicle through which to meditate on evil and the consequences of evil, Shakespeare felt the need to omit almost entirely the positive aspects of Macbeth's character and just focus only on the negative, is what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay. And so, on that same token, do you think Shakespeare intended Macbeth to be a sympathetic character? You know, someone that we can identify with and feel bad for in the same way that we perhaps feel for Hamlet. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with that. We have to sympathize to Macbeth. At the same, I don't know. At the same time, we can say that we don't need to. I guess because it's we need to sympathize to him because it seems like that he doesn't have his own opinion, or he doesn't have his own say about this, but he doesn't have his own decision making, or he can't make decision by his own, but we can sympathize to him because of his inability to make his own decisions. But we can also say that we can sympathize to him because of the same reason. I guess it depends on you on how you take things. But for me, I guess we need to sympathize to him because it seems like that he's someone who needs we can see more character developments on him if he only has his own decisions in life, I guess. But this that's what this film that was this play makes it unique, I guess, that it's focused more on his inability to think or have his own decisions. So yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's he's sympathetic in the sense that we all of us as human beings we make mistakes at some point in our lives, but for the most part, I would say no, he's definitely not supposed to be a sympathetic character. I don't think Shakespeare was trying to portray him as sympathetic, because Macbeth is really he's just a prime example of how not to behave. He's really about as worse as they come, you know. And he's worse than someone who's purely evil because he recognizes the implications of what he is doing, but still does it anyway. Do you know what I mean? And then when he does it the first time, he starts to freak out a little bit. But instead of giving into his guilt and doing the right thing and going on let's just say the righteous path and trying to correct that mistake, you know, instead of, for example, instead of rejecting Lady Macbeth's kind of command to go through with the murder, her urgings, her insistence. Instead of doing that and saying, you know what, no, I'm not going to do it. I don't want to kill him. It's wrong. I like Duncan. It's wrong. We can't do this. It's not worth it. And then just accept his thanedom and move on with his life. Enjoy what he actually earned for himself. Instead of doing that, he kills the king, and then instead of confessing for killing the king after he does it, he doubles down and he starts to kill other people to make sure that no one else finds out no that what he did, and then after that he triples down and starts killing their kids and their wives and everything, and he just becomes this nasty, like this is an even worse and worse and worse versions of himself until he's an absolute tyrant and an absolute beast, an absolute monster, and completely irredeemable, I would say. There's no returning from, there's no coming back from the dark places that he goes to throughout the play, and by the very end he's completely fucked, I would say. um but but yeah, and the evil, the worst thing about him, where he's most evil is in that he made a conscious decision to do the things he did and become the person he became. And every choice he made was the exact wrong choice, the complete opposite of what he should have done. And for me, really, that's what makes the play overall so unpleasant, is the fact that that Macbeth does and is the exact opposite of what he should do and be. And without any template or frame of reference for what, the exact opposite of what you should do might look like, we might risk doing and being exactly what we shouldn't be, doing and being, I suppose. So that's what he is, really. He's a model of behavior that you should definitely not, under any circumstances, comply with or follow or aspire to. He is the exact opposite. He's like in a way he's the perfect villain. But maybe that's also why he's not the most interesting villain, and we'll get into that in a little bit. I personally think Hamlet is more interesting if Hamlet is a villain. I think Hamlet would be the more interesting villain of the two. But the fact that Macbeth is so the fact that he's like a perfect villain in the sense that he's so bad in so many different, in all the, he's bad in all the right ways, in the sense that and right is in all the completely wrong ways, if that makes sense. It's a little confusing, but I think that's why Macbeth is so important. He really does personify and embody the worst kind of evil, because he chooses to be evil even when he's the one being hurt the most. And I think that's very sobering stuff. He's kind of like an addict. He can't control himself, even though he knows that another, syringe of heroin or another drink is going to completely undo him. He does it anyway. He goes through with it. And then before you know it, he's relapsed. And it's just this mess. And that's really who Macbeth seems to be. He seems to be addicted to temptation in a sense. And I think that's Shakespeare's way of speaking out against self-destruction is through this particular play. Is there anything you'd like to add to that before we move on to the next question?
Yeah, I agree with you that Hamlet is better than him because um uh I don't know, for everything that Macbeth have done, there's no such reason for him to do these things. I can see a main reason for him to be this way or to act this way. He's just he lets this thing to he just chooses to be evil, and that's all. He wanted to be evil, so I can see any reason for him to do that. There's a reason, but it's not as deep as Hamlet, I guess.
Do you think Macbeth is a sociopath or something? Do you think he's a psychopath? Do you think he has some sort of mental disorder that leads him to do all of this that Shakespeare probably wouldn't have understood back in the day because there wasn't, psychology or neuroscience or anything like that? Do you think Macbeth is mentally, something disabled, demented? Do you think that might be why he wants this power so much and why he's so like kind of messed up? Does he have a mental disorder, do you think?
Yeah. Based on the standards that we have now, I guess that we can say that he's a sociopath. I guess that it's not normal it's not normal for to act that way. It's never been normal to just drop into evil because he just wanted to. I guess that we can understand him if there's a great reason or at least a big reason for him to do this. But I can see any reason. So maybe he just wanted to be evil, and that's all. And that's what making us such a part.
Yeah, I think, but I don't know. I would say it's a little more, because again, Shakespeare didn't really understand. I really doubt Shakespeare would have understood, just like anyone else in his day would have understood, like, mental disorders and everything as clearly as we do now. Um, I'm not saying that that's what he was trying to go with. Obviously, I don't think that was his intent. He didn't know about it. It's just a completely different world from now. We're living in a completely different world now than we were back in his day, in his time, in his era. But I guess just I don't know. To me, Macbeth ultimately he's kind of. I think the reason why Shakespeare wrote him the way he did, to where he's because if he really was a sociopath, he probably wouldn't feel bad. You know what I mean? Is my things. He Macbeth seems to have this kind of disorder or something that doesn't actually exist in real life, because again, Shakespeare wouldn't have known. He wouldn't have tried to connect it that way. And the whole play itself is appropriated from events in history that didn't really go the way that they do in Macbeth anyway. And there were political reasons as to why Macbeth and the other characters are portrayed as they are. All these factors that are put into the finished product, you have to take them all into consideration. And I would say that ultimately, I think what Shakespeare is trying to artistically render through and convey through the character of Macbeth. Macbeth is supposed to be Macbeth. Really, he's supposed to be the guy that you look at and you're like, why is he this way? Why is he evil? Why does he knows that this is wrong? Why is he doing it? You know what I mean? You ask those questions, but then you realize that you can probably ask yourself the same questions for different things. Those same judgments, those same that confusion can be applied to yourself, to each of us, to every single person. You can't. You're lying to yourself if you can't think of an example, of an instance of a moment in your life where you would have asked what you're asking Macbeth as you watch him fuck up and just make all these completely awful decisions, the exact opposite of what he should be doing. Committing all these terrible fucking deeds and everything. There can't be a single person out there in the world who hasn't asked themselves the same questions. I could think of a dozen, hundreds. I could probably think of a million, honestly. Examples, not only in my life but in other people's lives and everybody's lives. Really, I mean, I think again, it's a human thing, and Macbeth is a distillation of that particular aspect of the human condition, the human experience. We ask, why is Macbeth? Why is he? Why does he kill the king? Why does he want power? Why is he doing this to himself? But then at the same time, he's like, why? It's like the same. It's probably the same reason. He's probably doing it. It's like the same thing. Whatever's compelling him to do that is the same thing that compels me to oversleep in the morning when I'm supposed to go to school. It's the same thing that compels me to turn my alarm off. It's the same thing that compels me to get mad at mad at someone else, like one of my friends or something, when they do something that I think is annoying, instead of doing the big boy kind of grown up moral thing and just deal with it or ignore it or whatever. It's the thing that makes me. It's the thing that makes a person get mad when they're driving and someone passes them in traffic or something, and then they honk their horn and they get into an accident, or it's like it's all these things. So I think really Macbeth, it tells us a lot about ourselves in this in the sense that we get all very we get uppity, we get very morally righteous when it comes to him, but at the end of the day, he's just a more obvious version of ourselves. What he's doing is just it's what we're all doing, just somewhat more exaggerated, somewhat clearer to see. It's much clearer to see all of that, the evil and everything that comes from him. But it's like at the end of the day, we all have that in ourselves, at least a little bit. And so it's kind of, I think Shakespeare's trying to make us realize that. He's trying to get us to see that we're really not much better, and that we could also, more importantly, that we could also end up being like that if we don't control ourselves and become aware of it. And so I think this is Shakespeare's way of going, don't do that. This, if you acknowledge it, be aware, and recognize that you are not, you run the risk always. All of us as human beings run the risk of becoming Macbeth. We got to be careful. We got to do what it takes to not be. Do you have anything to add to that, Simone?
Yeah, I agree with you that it's more it's someone that reminds us of ourselves. I guess that he has some traits of of a sociopath or psychopath. I guess, but it's not as bad. I guess as a psychopath. I guess if he's a psychopath, I guess that we haven't come up, or we will not come up with this idea. I guess that uh if he's a psychopath, is all he will do is just fuck up and mess up around. I guess that there's no story at all. So maybe in our social standard by now, he has is the symptoms of being a psychopath, but we're basing these things that it was made from a different era. So maybe, yeah, I agree with you that it's more on portraying portraying ourselves, or a mirror, I guess, to just reflect on ourselves, or decisions that we're making, or how human beings. I guess that this play is something that will remind us to look at ourselves, or check ourselves. So that's yeah.
Yeah, I think the reason why this play is so introspective is because it's literally a call for introspection. It's literally Shakespeare telling you, the viewer, to take some time to introspect. To think, you really think about why you are the way you are, why you do the things you do. To consider to contemplate. It's less existential. It's more moral. It's more ethical than Hamlet. Because Hamlet's all about reflecting on death and reflecting on one's place in the universe and all that. And this one, meanwhile, this is the moral one. Macbeth is the moral Hamlet. We got to sit here and we got to question why we are the way we are, why we do the things we do, and why we're so privy to evil, perhaps why we can be the victims to our own desires, and why those desires are so bad, and like what we can do to fix that and everything. Because once you start questioning you're a step ahead. Once you do that, you can start to move towards coming up with possible solutions. And while Shakespeare doesn't necessarily provide solutions within this particular play, he tells us what not to do, and that's a start. Start by eliminating possibilities. I would say, and that's he does a phenomenal job with that. And Macbeth is a great example of exactly what not to be. Like I said before. And yeah, maybe that's why the play is so unpleasant. Maybe that's why it was, for me anyway, it was kind of hard to watch at times, and it made me feel really bad coming out of it. It's not necessarily depressing, but it's something more than depressing. It's just, the only way I can describe it is as dark. It's a very dark play, and it makes you feel, and it leaves you leave it feeling very dark yourself. And I think that's because it wakes you up to it alerts you to the fact that there is that darkness in you, in all of us, and it makes you question your own decisions and your own life, and it forces you to evaluate that, and that's not fun. And that's exactly why we have to do it, because it's not fun, because of how unfun it is, because of how uncomfortable it is. Because if we didn't have something like this, that if we didn't have someone like Macbeth who very clearly illustrates the human problem of evil, that's within us all, we might not question it ever, because it's hard and it's not fun, it's unpleasant. And so through telling it in a very artistic, in a very dramatic kind of, in an entertaining way, Shakespeare is making it a little easier, but also easier while simultaneously making it so much worse, because he is emphasizing the worst parts of us, and really forcing us to stare at it. We're staring, what we're doing here is we're kind of staring, we're staring at ourselves, and we're looking at ourselves in a mirror that only shows us our worst aspects, And I think that's the significance of Macbeth, and that's what the point is, and that's what makes it so good and so effective and so impactful. It shears off anything else. It forces us to confront it. There are no distractions here. We don't get to see Macbeth do anything good. We don't get to see any. There's very little comedy. There's very little relief from just this state of discontent that comes from the evils that we commit or can commit and always have the potential to commit. Is there anything you'd like to add to that, Simone?
Yeah, I agree with you. This one is really back in the days that it was set on a different era. So maybe this one is just a reminder for the people to think ourselves, because we can come up with this idea by on ourselves, but maybe this one is it's an easier way to get into this idea, because we're just talking into ourselves or in deeper into our own thoughts. I guess that it's hard to come up with this thing. So maybe this one is a really great help, even though it maybe worsen things out. Because maybe it just is an easier way to understand things. Maybe even though it just simultaneously, let's say that it will simultaneously make things worse. But I guess that it's hard to come up with this idea on ourselves. Maybe you need to be more philosophical to come up with this. But this one, it is a great help for us to get into this idea easier, I guess.
Yeah, I think this is a textbook example of something having to get worse in order for it to get better. It has to get worse in order for it to get better. I think that's what Shakespeare's trying to say about human morality, at least in this play. And I could be wrong about that, but that's just what I see. But so you said it worked for people back in his day, but do you think it's universal? Do you think this Macbeth is the play itself? Do you think it's survived the test of time? Do you think it's just as relevant today as it was back then? And do you think people now, like if they saw this, do you think they would be able to still, do you think it would still work as well, and it would trigger them to perhaps introspect and to reflect on who they are and why they are as they are and everything, all that? Do you think it still has that impact today?
Yeah, I agree with you because it works on us. So maybe it can work on other people in today's reality or in today's generation. It works on us. So it could also work for other people.
So you don't think it's lost any of its potency over the years because this is hundreds and hundreds of years old.
Um, I think that's what make Shakespeare really interesting because even though his works are 100 years ago, I guess that it survived because it has their universality. I guess that it's universal. Even in from it comes from a different era, it still survived because it has something that connects us as a human being. That there are things that it made us reminds us to observe ourselves or to the aspects of life that we need to get into or apply in our lives.
Okay, and I was gonna say something else, but what was I gonna say? He this one, well, because I I can't say how people back then would have felt about it, but it's because a lot of the superficial elements of it are no longer applicable today. The fact that we don't really have monarchies anymore, and if we do, the countries that still do have monarchies, that the kings and queens don't actually have any control. Queen Elizabeth II doesn't have any influence; she can't really do much. It's not what it used to be anymore. Now we have presidents and prime ministers and whatnot, and it's much more democratic, and there are these strict classes in most places. I mean, in India, there's still the caste system and all that. They're still dealing with the fallout from that, and we're all still dealing with the fallout from that still. But it's not. We've got distance now. We've got time. We've got hundreds of years. Well, not just hundreds, but years and decades. Well, maybe not necessarily hundreds, but decades and decades of. And hundreds. I don't know where I was going with that, but of time and distance from the way things used to be. And maybe we can't appreciate it as much as people could back then. The whole thing about kings and queens, killing a king. That's like in Shakespeare's time, for Shakespeare's audience, that would have been a mortal sin. Nowadays we kind of look at it, and because it's so old, we just go, huh. We kind of treat it more like a fairy tale than we do reality. But for the people back then, that was definitely reality. That was real. That was more than real. That was everything. So I think some aspects of that are lost, that for sure, and that can't be helped. That's not Shakespeare's fault. That's not anybody's fault. That's just the way the world works. That's history for you. That's time, really, and no one can. We are all subservient of time. We can't dominate it. At least not now. Maybe in the future we'll be able to do all sorts of weird things with time. But for now anyway, it's not going to happen. We are victims to it. We have to accept that things like this happen. Hundreds of years go by and you lose certain things, but you still do think that kernel of truth is just as relevant as it was back then, today, now, as it was back then. You think that the core of this play is still applicable that people still need to look at themselves, and that they might always need to look at themselves and stave off evil through reflection and introspection and most of all awareness. Simone.
Yeah, I think that we really need. It applies that the core idea of this one is to check on ourselves. I guess that we need to really check on ourselves. But just like you said, that it loses some values through the years because we're constantly evolving as human beings. There are some aspects that we didn't consider anymore. I guess we consider it, but we look at things in a different perspective now. So yeah, maybe there's maybe this one is for. I think this one is intended not only way back in those times. I guess this one was made for especially the Shakespearean play. I guess that it was intended for the educated audiences. I guess that given that is the line, I guess it's far more from the. It's made for the aristocrats. I guess the educated audiences to check on themselves, maybe to set as a reminder for themselves because they're the one who will on the throne or has the power to make things better. So maybe yun. And then we're lucky that that right now everyone has the opportunity to get into this one to understand these literary pieces.
Yeah, so in a way, Shakespeare is probably more effective than he ever was before because now everyone can experience him as opposed to just the upper classes of his day. So it's actually it's aged like fine wine, really, and that's what's so powerful about him and his work, and a lot of other writers, but especially Shakespeare because he's done so many good things, so many influential things, and he really did change the landscape altogether. Art and literature and all that for the and theater, well, all of that for the better. Really did kind of make it, and I think he does deserve that reputation and everything. And it's good that time has done him well, and better even than his own time, I suppose. But yeah, yeah. And so going off what you said earlier about well, just now about the aristocrats and everything in the court. Do you think this has to do with the corrupting? Do you think the reason why he did it is because do you think this has to do with the themes that were covered in As You Like It? The whole notion of the court life kind of corrupting people and getting them to do dirty, kind of to scheme and to machinate and all that for power. Do you think this might be another like an extension of that? That like in As You Like It, he presents that as a problem, and then in Macbeth, he shows you what happens when you give into that problem. Yeah, what are your thoughts? Do you see a connection between the two plays, As You Like It and Macbeth?
Yeah, yeah. I think some of his work. I think his works are related to each other when we just think more critically about it, or to get into each of these to think about more how could relate it. I agree with you that it's connected to each other. So given in those times that the aristocrat or the court has their own power, so maybe I think this one is really a reminder to set us a reminder for each and every one. For example, the as if you like it, he portrayed the how will the court will corrupt you, and so this one is just how it just he show us that how will this corruption will really make us bad, or things that will make us bad. I think he wanted to let the people or remind people what they should do and they shouldn't do. I guess that's what it's really made it really made him great as a where he makes a name, I guess, that Shakespeare is. Yeah.
Right, right, yeah, exactly. So now let's move on to the soliloquies because there are there are two really famous soliloquies that I want to cover. The one from it's called people refer to it as Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow from Macbeth. I want to go through you. I want to go through this one with you first. I sent you it in the chat, so you can pull that up and follow along as I read it for the listeners' benefit. But then after we talk about, I want to talk about that one for a bit. And then I want to get into it, and then I want to move on to the one from Hamlet, To Be or Not To Be. I want to compare them, and through that we can compare the characters and the plays, and then we'll end this episode. But so yeah, pull that up if you haven't already. Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. That's the first one we're going to cover. So what I want to get into for this is what the meaning behind this soliloquy is. This was towards the end of the play when Macbeth has just received the news that his wife, Lady Macbeth, is dead. And I'll read it to you all now. She should have died hereafter. There would have been a time for such a word. Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day to the last syllable of recorded time, and all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death. Out, out, brief candle. Life is but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. And that was Macbeth, Act 5, Scene 5. And fun fact, by the way, Sound and Fury is actually the title of a famous novel by the American writer William Faulkner, sorry. And I have it in my bookcase, and I haven't read it yet, but it's really good. And that's where the title from that comes from. It comes from Shakespeare. Also, Undiscovered Country from Hamlet is the name of the Star Trek movie Undiscovered Country, and they actually reference it in the film itself, which I didn't know. So that's a pretty neat little thing there. And also, a quick other fun fact, and this doesn't really have anything to do with the other ones, but Macbeth is actually, it's not even half as long as, it's less than half the length of Hamlet. It's actually, I believe Macbeth is actually Shakespeare's shortest tragedy, even though it feels really long. So there's a little fun fact there. And I think the reason why it's long is because it takes time to perform some of the things in the actual text itself. So the text is shorter, but the production of it, or the performance of it, is long enough to kind of justify it and make it not feel not very short or anything. So yeah, there you go. Fun facts in case you guys wanted them. So what do you think that means? What do you get out of that soliloquy, Simone, when you read it? What are your thoughts?
My thoughts about it, I guess. I think looking forward for tomorrow means future. I guess that he's thinking more of the tomorrow, but I guess during for this I think that he viewed tomorrow as he's bored of. It seems like that tomorrow. I guess it's just repeating cycle of that makes him bored about it. That makes it's boring at all. It makes him boring. That in the end of the day will just perish. It will this. It's just it's dark around here. I guess that it's dark somewhere here. That it's just a passing moment. That this darkness and darkness and darkness, and then it's boring because it's just a repeating cycle. I guess that's why I see it.
Is it boring or is it painful? Because keep in mind that Macbeth is saying this when he's finally been caught and there's no escape for him. Everything is falling apart around him, and he's going to be dethroned as a king. He knows he's going to die soon. So he's saying this knowing that. Is it boring? Is he saying that life is boring, or that life is painful?
I think it could be both ways. I guess that it's painful. Yeah, it's really painful, and it's what make it boring because it's a repeating cycle. It's just the pain is repeating and repeating every day. That it's a cycle, and then the pain is just maybe it could make you feel numb, and then it will make you feel bored at all. That it's just pain all every day or all your life. It's just pain.
But boring doesn't seem like the right word to me as also. I'm just trying to understand why does you think that way. I'm not saying that it's necessarily wrong, but I'm curious to know what your perspective is on that, because when I would think instead of boring, it's more, he's saying that life is more it's tedious, it's repetitive, it's but I understand the connection between repetition and all that and boredom, but I don't know. It's not quite the right word for it, because I don't think at any point in the play he's bored. I think he's constantly racked with guilt, and he's suffering on the inside. I don't think he has time to be bored, because he's in such pain. I don't think he would be bored. What do you think? Would you like to expand on that a little more?
I guess I need to use a different word. Just you say it should be tedious, because a boring didn't fit at all, because a bore, it doesn't seem to be bored at all in these things, because boredom is just I guess that no emotion at all, but he's in pain, I guess. He's in pain, so yeah, tedious is much better than boredom. Boredom shouldn't be used, I guess. That yeah, to be bored is to don't have any emotion at all. So yeah, we should use tedious.
Yeah, and then even tedious though for me, I would say that it's maybe unvarying, but I was thinking more when I listened to this when I read the soliloquy, and when I listened to it in the play, and then when I read it afterwards, I thought it was more saying that I thought Macbeth was saying that life is meaningless. There's no meaning to it. It's pointless, maybe not boring, but pointless, and also painful. Life is meaningless. Life is painful, and it doesn't matter whether you die today or tomorrow or any day, because in the end, it's all the same. And Macbeth, again, he is in, as he's saying this, he's in the throes of despair, because he knows that there's no way back from the mistakes that he's made. Everything leading up to this point has boxed him in, and he's about to die. He's been waiting for his comeuppance, and therefore his death for a really long time too. From the very beginning, he knew that this was going to happen. Like he that's what he was guilty about. That's what he was worried about the entire time, and now it's finally here. And so I think what he's trying to say through this soliloquy is that that dying will be a relief to him at this point, because it'll mean no longer having dying will mean no longer having to fear death, because it'll just happen and it'll be over. He can get it over with and move on, and put it all behind him. Whether or not dying will be a solution, well, we'll get into that with To Be or Not To Be, because that's kind of the whole point of that soliloquy. But that's how he feels anyway. He feel dying. He would Macbeth anyway. Macbeth would rather, he would choose to not be as opposed to be. He wants to die at this point. He just straight up, unequivocally. And and so of course the main reason why he's being so pessimistic and nihilistic and negative in this is because he's finally gotten caught, and he knows that he's fucked. So now answer me this, Simone. Do you think that his recognition, okay, do you think his recognition of the weight of his sins, the sins that he's committed, exonerates him, or do you think that it's too late for him now? Do you think that the evil within him has dominated whatever good may be left? Because this seems to be, this soliloquy, tomorrow and tomorrow, tomorrow, it seems to be the one time in the play that he kind of becomes heroic, at least a little bit. It's not really heroic. It's just it's not bad, I guess. This is where he introspects, and this is the one time that we see him as more than just, as not steeped in his guilt and suffering and his temptation and everything. This is where he seems to kind of take his own, he kind of stands on his own 2 feet for once and has a little bit of independence, but it's too late. It's all for naught at this point. Do you think the fact that he recognizes, he has the ability to be aware of how messed up he is and how messed up the situation is and how messed up his actions were, do you think that exonerates him? Do you think he can be redeemed through that? Or is it too late? Is that too little too late? Is that not enough, do you think?
Yeah, I guess this one reflects that. That's what you say, that this is the only part of the play that he thinks for himself. I guess that he gives time for himself to think about it. We can say that he could be redeemed at all, or we can say that he can be good. But it seems like this one, there's what you say, that it's already meaningless. I guess that he already accepted his fate, that he realizes that the things that he done wrong, or the things that he's still doing wrong, but in the end it seems like he already surrendered. I think he's ready to die or to face the consequences of his action. So just like that, he keeps on, he will just it's meaningless at all, so he'll just continue on being evil. So it seems to me like that yes, he realized that he's wrong, but it seems like he doesn't see any hope at all, or maybe any chances for himself to be good. So he sees everything as it's already meaningless, and then that will only be the best thing that could happen to me, or it could be a liberation. So yeah, that's it. It seems like that he realizes he's wrong, and but it seems like it's already, he accepted that it's already too late for him to change. So maybe that is the only way for him to get redeemed or something.
So he's defeated. He's saying it because he's defeated. But would you personally? Okay, so how about just remove analysis and everything. Would you personally forgive him for that? If you were at the let's say you can control whether or not he goes to heaven or hell after giving that speech and dying, would you send him to heaven or hell? Which one and why? Or purgatory maybe. You get to choose his fate. What decision do you make and why?
I guess I don't know if this it will be a controversial one, or something that it will be against some moral. I guess I will let him to heaven. I guess
Really?
you can only see. I will let him go to heaven. I will, maybe because I appreciate him for this one. I guess maybe from the movies that we can see that there are some good characters that also it's rare for some good characters to reflect something. I guess that we can only see this significant or very important introspection through some villains, I guess. So that's why I let him go to heaven, because this one is doesn't only apply to him, because it could also um, affect people, or let people think for themselves to think about to be good, or it depends on how you will see these things, I guess.
I just realized something interesting, by the way. The word defeat itself, it means defeat. So if you break it apart, D is in like, undo or whatever, remove or, opposite of, I'm not a linguist, but, D, and then feat, like feat, like an action, or like a thing, like something like a hero does. A hero does great feats, that older term. Defeat means to undo that feat, and so that's what defeat literally means. You failed to do something. I didn't realize that meant that. So that's pretty interesting. And I just thought of that just now. So thanks, Shakespeare, I guess, for getting me in the mindset to realize that. That's pretty cool. I guess language is a lot more interesting than most people, but especially me, than especially I give it credit for being. But yeah. In terms of whether or not I would, what I would do is what I would do with Macbeth's soul or whatever. I'd probably send him to hell. Honestly, he had it coming for a long time, and he knows he has it coming. That's not enough to forgive him. It's like, and that's the thing about him, man. It's more than too late for him at that point. It's not enough for him to just call out what he is and what he's done. And that would be a lot like to send him to heaven. For me personally, it would just be a lot like exonerating a serial killer, for like apologizing for like eating his own parents, 30 years after he does it. The fact that it's 30 years later, and the fact that he feels bad about it, or pretends to feel bad about it, is not enough. Even if he genuinely feels bad, it's too late. I don't believe in just redemption at the last second, and then you get into the pearly gates or whatever. You got to go to hell for what you've done. You've done bad. You got to do your time for it. Maybe in a perfect afterlife situation, you serve your time, and then you go up to maybe purgatory, and then you earn your way up to heaven eventually. But maybe it's not. Maybe being maybe eternal damnation is not always eternal for everybody. Maybe that's reserved for just a select few of really awful people, and maybe even then, after a while, maybe someone will cut them a break or whatever. But this is all just we're getting into hypothetical theology at this point. But yeah, I don't know, man. It seems kind of lame. It would seem his it's too late, and I think it's supposed to be lame. It's not his. This isn't some big moment where we feel really bad. We're like, oh man, oh he feels sorry. It's like an abusive boyfriend or something. He beats the shit out of his girlfriend, and then he comes back the next night and he apologizes, and she lets him back in, and then 2 weeks later he does the same thing. Leaves, comes back, apologizes, and then she forgives him, and it's this whole cycle. It's like, no, you gotta you gotta stop, you gotta put your foot down, you gotta stop the cycle, you gotta send him straight to hell. That's what I would do anyway. He deserves it unequivocally. There's no denying that. You might feel a little sorry for him. You might go, you might be like, I wish it could have been different. I wish things could have been better. But at that point, you just got to cut him loose. It's like a bad friend, or something. You got to just let him go. What is it? Release him to his fate or whatever. Let him deal with the consequences, basically, because he deserves them. And he's gonna die now, so it's probably too late. It's probably not gonna do him any good, but it's all he deserves, basically. That's what I think. Maybe that's a little too harsh. I don't know. But there are just some things you just can't do. There are some things there are some lines you just don't cross. And I think especially in Shakespeare's time, killing a king and a king who's nice to you and who trusts you and who gives you a title and some power and stuff for what you've done. Killing him and killing him not because he's corrupt or anything, the way Hamlet kills or wants to kill, or well, I guess eventually does kill Claudius because he is corrupt. Here Hamlet, oh God, Macbeth isn't killing Duncan. He's not murdering for a good reason or a quote unquote good reason. He's not trying to morally justify it to himself. It's not a moral issue. He just wants power. He just wants to be in control. And so again, this must be like the mortal sin. This must be the worst possible thing you can do for within the context of Shakespeare's time and for a Shakespearean audience originally. That was like the worst thing you could have done in that kind of society. And for that reason and everything else that I've just outlined, I would send him to hell because it's irredeemable. It's way too late. Is there anything you want to add to that before we move on to the Hamlet soliloquy?
Yeah. I just realized something. Maybe done. He's really affected. This is how really some criminals works, I guess, to win our trust back, to give to give a to make us fool, to make a fool out of us, I guess, to let us to at least use the good leftiness, I guess, for them to say something good to win us back, I guess. So maybe that's how this one works for me. So I get fooled by him. So that's what I realized. So maybe yeah, I guess that I need to agree with you with that at least at some point he needs to suffer for his what he's done, because there's really no such reason for him to do that. So yeah, there's no such reason. So maybe it made him some. There's also no reason for him to go to heaven. I guess that it's pointless for him to do these things. That there's we can give him the chance to go to heaven if there's something, a reason for him to do that. But even though he still do something bad, so yeah, he deserves to go to hell or something. That he must at least before he go to heaven, I guess he first needs to at least suffer or reconcile for what he's done, I guess, to feel what he really deserved for the real consequences of his action.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And hey, remind me to send you this later. But what you just said actually reminded me of a clip of Ted Bundy, the American famous American serial, or not, maybe not necessarily famous, but notorious American serial killer. It's a video. It was a clip from a video of his an interview that they did with him. I think it was on the day of his execution, and the last thing he said to the public, to the people, before he died was you know oh, I became this way because I watched pornography as a kid, basically, and like don't do that. Don't be like me. Don't be like me. Don't be a serial killer. Keep your kids away from that so that they don't get corrupted like me. And he was trying to basically by doing that, it kind of I'm sure he tricked a lot of people into going like, oh, he's not too bad a guy. I think that's what he was trying to do because he's a sociopath. That's how they work. That's how they operate. They thrive on screwing, on tricking people, on getting one over them. On making them, on being like, oh, look how stupid they are for liking me and stuff. That's exactly. It was a way for him to dominate. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, for someone like him, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think he was definitely doing that, and I think that's what But then again, see, I don't know if Shakespeare knows anything about sociopathy or psychopathy or anything. I don't know if he knows that, so I don't know if that was what he was trying to do, and I don't know if it necessarily matters really, because I see that connection there. I'm willing to make it. I think that's what art is. You, the viewer, you, the consumer, you fill in the blanks there, and that's the blank I fill in there. That's the insight that I gain. That's what I connect with that. So remind me to send you that clip later, though. It's really interesting. And for all those of you who are listening, just look up Ted Bundy last interview on YouTube. It's really eye opening stuff. And yeah, I'm surprised I made that connection because I didn't come in here trying to make that connection. So that's really interesting. Such is the productivity, I guess. Such is the power of Shakespeare. But yeah, I mean I feel like that might be what Macbeth is trying to do through this. But I don't know if he's trying to get the audience or anything. I don't know if he's trying to get the viewer in some metafictional way to like feel bad for him, or if he, I don't know. I don't think that's what Shakespeare's trying to make Macbeth do necessarily. But I don't know. I feel like some people. I guarantee you, people have felt bad for Macbeth when he's given this speech before. I guarantee you, it's complicated things for people, moral, ethically, morally, morality wise. But yeah, I still don't. I would still send him straight to hell just as much as I would if I could control it. I would send Ted Bundy straight to hell too. Without a doubt, unquestioningly. But yeah. So, is there anything you want to add to that? Sorry, I keep kind of delaying the Hamlet soliloquy, but is there anything you want to comment on before we move on to Hamlet?
Yeah, I agree with you that with that one that Shakespeare don't know what these things about the sociopath, I guess, or something, but it can also Macbeth's last speech, I guess, that it could be also sound like this, but you say that it's you're able to connect it with some serial killer. So I guess that yeah, it's somehow that uh, it's something that wants us to at least forgive them, but at least we can forgive them, but at least forgive them in some points that they still admit what they're done, I guess, but we cannot leave the fact that they should face the consequences of this action. That forgiveness will not escape the fact that it will not enables them to escape what they deserve, I guess.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So now pull up if you haven't already, Simone. Pull up the to be or not to be soliloquy so that we can read it over together, and I'll read this out for the listener's benefit and also to go through it, because I think in order to understand to better understand Macbeth, we kind of need to compare him to someone similar, and the most similar I think anyway. I haven't seen all the other we haven't seen all the plays yet, so we can't make connections that we don't know about, that we're not aware of, but I feel like this probably the most similar play to Macbeth is Hamlet. So, in order to better understand each, let's compare them. Let's compare and contrast. And so, I will read to you all now the to be or not to be soliloquy from Hamlet. To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against the sea of troubles, and by opposing end them, to die, to sleep, no more, and by a sleep to say we end the heartache and the thousand natural shocks that flesh is heir to. 'Tis a consummation devoutly to be wished, to die, to sleep, perchance to dream. Aye, there's the rub. For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come, when we have shuffled off this mortal coil, must give us pause. There's the respect that makes calamity of so long life. For who would bear the whips and scorns of time, the oppressor's wrong, the proud man's contumely, the pangs of despised love, the law's delay, the insolence of office, and the spurns that patient merit of the unworthy takes, when he himself might his quietus make, what a bear with a bare bodkin, who would fardels bear? To grunt and sweat under a weary life, but that the dread of something after death, the undiscovered country, Star Trek, from whose bourne no traveller returns, puzzles the will, and makes us rather bear those ills we have, than fly to others that we know not of. Thus conscience does make cowards of us all, and thus the native hue of resolution is sicklied o'er with the pale cast of thought, and enterprises of great pitch and moment, with this regard their currents turn awry, and lose the name of action. Soft you now, the fair Ophelia, nymph in thy orisons, be all my sins remembered. And that's from Hamlet, Act 3, Scene 1. And so we're going to try to compare the contrast, we're going to compare and contrast the two. And also when we do this, keep in mind how Hamlet seems to interact with Ophelia, how he feels about Ophelia versus how Macbeth feels about Lady Macbeth, Whereas, and I think that says a lot about both of them, how they regard their beloved or their loved one or whoever it's supposed to be, their female other, let's say. Because with Macbeth doesn't give a shit, doesn't seem to give a shit about Lady Macbeth. His whole speech, his soliloquy is about himself. He barely even talks about her. She just seems to serve as the impetus for that nihilistic musing on how painful life is and how he just wants to die, Whereas with Hamlet, and this is part of the reason why I think Hamlet is just way better morally than Macbeth, is because Hamlet cares about Ophelia. He feels bad that he has to kind of manipulate her in order to he thinks he has to do that in order to get to Claudius, in order to kill Claudius, to make Denmark better. He feels bad, and he acknowledges that, and he cares about her. You can tell that he cares about her, whereas Macbeth doesn't seem to give a shit about Lady Macbeth. Just keep that in mind when we do this compare and contrast. But so, Simone, tell me this: how does Macbeth's soliloquy compare to Hamlet's?
Macbeth's soliloquies, I guess it's dwells on the negativity. I guess that it's negative for me that he viewed that the only thing that we can do is because the life is so painful. I guess that is the only way. But I guess that is I think it's a tragic end, but I guess that it's a tragic end, but it will end the pain. I guess that um for life is only the for only pain. I guess that will be pain. That is painful, but it is the only way to be liberated. I guess that's how what the soliloquy of Macbeth seems to me. But here in To Be or Not To Be by Hamlet, I guess this one is more positive. I guess that to to not to be. I guess he treats he sees that as something as sleep. I guess that sleep that it will enables you to dream, something like that. That it's more on the positive side. I guess that not to be. It's something that more like on a dream state, because he compared it to sleep. That is something positive or something. That's how I see this one.
And what does that say about the similarities and the differences between the characters of Macbeth and Hamlet? These two soliloquies. What do they say about their characters, and what's different about them? What's similar? Let's really get into that. What are your thoughts?
it seems that Macbeth he's really bad. I guess that he accepted his fate. That is his only escape. His only escape is to be bad. To his death. I guess that he realizes these things, but it seems that he's not willing at all to change because he already accepted his fate that he's bad and evil and this life is painful. So I'll just go with the flow and be evil until the end. So that's how I see it. And Hamlet, I guess that he wanted to end the cycle of revenge or hatred. I guess that I can we can more sympathize. I guess that Hamlet is more heroic than um than Macbeth at all. With Hamlet, we can sympathize to him that he wanted to end this cycle of hatred because it's the best thing to do. And then um, while while Macbeth sees wanted to end things because he doesn't have a choice at all. That its life is painful, and then that's the only way to end these things for the where life is painful. I guess that to just finish what he's feeling or the bad things that is happening to him, while Hamlet wanted to end the cycle of revenge for the betterment of things. Yeah.
So he wanted to end the cycle of revenge for the betterment of things. So he had better intentions. Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. So the differences and the similarities between the characters of Macbeth and Hamlet. Macbeth is definitely in a sea of troubles. That goes without saying. But so is Hamlet, and both of their seas are partially of their own making. But definitely Macbeth's more so than Hamlet's. And these lines, I'm going to read these lines. These lines from To Be or Not To Be really they crystallize everything that I'm about to say about the differences and the similarities between these two protagonists, these two Shakespearean heroes. Thus conscience does make cowards of us all, thus conscience does make us. Thus conscience does make cowards of us all, and thus the native hue of resolution is sicklied over with the pale case of thought and enterprises of great pitch and moment. For me, these are the lines that connect the two characters in the plays the most. But Hamlet is definitely the more good of the two. Hamlet goes down his road of self-destruction with good intentions, whereas Macbeth was always trying to do evil. All Macbeth wanted was power, whereas Hamlet was seeking justice for his father's murder and the debasement of the kingdom of Denmark at the hands of his uncle Claudius. Everything around Hamlet was messed up and needed fixing, and in the end he gave it that fixing to a certain extent. But at the same time, he messed it up even more in the process. But compared to Macbeth, Hamlet's a fucking saint. You know what I mean? He's just an idiot. When Hamlet kills Polonius, it's by accident. And if it really was Claudius behind the curtain like he thought it was, he would have been the hero and the play would have ended more happily if it didn't turn out to be the old man instead of his uncle. But Macbeth, on the other hand, he has bad intentions coming into the play and only has himself to blame for the misery he endures throughout his individual story. And if anything, Macbeth actually has more in common with Claudius than he does Hamlet, because all Macbeth wanted, again, was power, and he was willing to kill in order to get it, and he did kill in order to get it, but then he ends up getting it, and he realizes that it wasn't worth killing in order to get it, and only through fucking up as badly as a human being possibly can did he bring himself to the same place, to the same state of mind, to the same state of existential woe and dread that Hamlet was at when he gave the whole, to be or not to be speech / soliloquy. Hamlet is easily the more sympathetic and morally justified of the two, and also, I think, the better villain, because of his balanced or rather precarious position between good and evil, between hero and villain, between protagonist and antagonist. Macbeth's obvious evil is obvious for a reason, because Shakespeare's trying to illustrate a different point with Macbeth than he is with Hamlet, but because he's meant to convey that point, and it is a completely different point. We might be comparing apples and oranges here, but at the same time, for me, that point just isn't as interesting as the point that Shakespeare makes with Hamlet. and that's just my opinion. That's my subjective stance on that. And those points being, by the way, that well, I guess for both of them, it's evil begets evil, but no, for that's for Hamlet. I don't know why I accidentally wrote that for Macbeth here in my notes, but for Hamlet's point is that the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and that evil begets evil. You know, he kills Polonius, and then that leads Laertes to conspire with Claudius, and then that leads to more corruption, and then that leads to everybody dying at the end. You know, everyone gets killed because of that, and that's because Hamlet fucks up. He makes the wrong choice, and again, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Kind of like like a lot of countless examples of that tragic hero. Dr. Octopus in Spider-Man 2. Whoever the kid is in Death Note, the one who has the notebook and ends up killing all the criminals in the world, but then becomes a bad guy himself because the power corrupts him. You know, to be a god, to be able to play around with death and stuff, it ruins him. It keeps him from going to heaven too. By the way, it damns his soul. It leads him. It makes him bound for purgatory. So then he just kind of does whatever the fuck he wants because he doesn't care. Light Yagami from that anime that everybody used to like and still probably like, and I kind of liked, but I could never finish it. But anyway, that's besides the point. So yeah, that's kind of how I feel about that. Don't really know what else I was gonna say there, but I personally think Macbeth is much more similar to Claudius than he is Hamlet. But at the same time, I think the distinction helps us understand each of them more. That is Hamlet and Macbeth. What do you think, Simone? Do you have anything to add to all of that? I want to hear your perspective.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't know. It's okay if I agree with you again. I
Sure.
agree with you that Macbeth is more similar to Claudius than Hamlet. I guess Hamlet is more heroic because there's a balance between his character. I guess that he's not pure evil. I guess he's the best of the two regarding the matter of being a villain. Because we can see much character development on Hamlet. I guess that it wasn't pointless. There's a reason why he's doing these things. That it wasn't just like full impulses or something that I wanted revenge for, or wanted to be evil because I just wanted to be evil. There's we can sympathize to him because there's a reason why he wanted revenge because for his father, but the reason is that he just messed up things. He didn't he resort to doing bad things just to get what the justice that he wanted to get, I guess. And then the things that he have done, for example, let's just say that he killed Polonius. It's an accident, and he didn't did it on purpose. Just not like Macbeth, that he's doing things because he just wanted to do it. There's no reason why he's doing it. It just that's really what make him a really pure evil. That he do things because he just wanted to do it. It's not actually he wanted, or maybe it seems that it's not his decision at all in the first place, because he's just affected. But we can say that it's also his decision because he has his own mind to think for himself, but he didn't use his ability to think for himself. He just resolved on these things. Yeah, he just rely on these things to do bad things, even though he has his own mind. Hamlet is really a pure saint, pure saint than than Macbeth. It's obvious because Hamlet is more likable in his character. We can get more about. We can learn more. Hamlet is more humane um, than uh, than than Macbeth at all. Because Macbeth is just a pure evil character that even though he repent or he realizes his sins in the end, that it seems like that he doesn't any have the urge to change at all, at least in the at the end of the day, he just wanted to. We can see that he realizes what he's done is wrong, but it doesn't seem that he he at the end that he wanted to change or something. That it sounds like that he changed at all. But Hamlet is really too good one. But it's also later to say that it's good that we can see the distinction or the differentiation between this character, that we can, by comparing them, we get into more to understand them, to get into their story. So yeah, that's a really good thing about this.
Yeah, because we can't really feel as bad for we can feel we might already feel bad for Hamlet, but we understand why he's more balanced, and why we feel bad for him as opposed to why we're more sympathetic towards him than we are towards Macbeth. We kind of, and that's just kind of how it comes, what it comes down to. You need a pure evil, let's say, like Macbeth, in order to better understand a more moral gray like Hamlet. You need that. So even though Hamlet is, I would say, a better character than Macbeth, Macbeth is still really important, and just almost just as important as Hamlet. But we just subjectively, emotionally, we lean more, we gravitate more towards Hamlet. And when all is said and done, I would still argue that Hamlet is still the better character, not just in terms of morals and everything, but just the better written character, just the more significant character. But then again, this is Shakespeare, so it's all comparative. It's like Macbeth is better than, let's say, 99.99% of fictional characters. Really, when it comes down to it, it's just because the insight you can acquire from that, the understanding of the world you gain from his example and all that, it's still all there. But ultimately, I would say Hamlet beats out Macbeth, and does so really by a country mile. But they're still very important, and it's good to compare them. And I'm glad that we did. That brings us. This is almost a 2-hour episode, but we needed that time in order to really unpack Macbeth, because it is a complex play, and it is very introspective, and so we gotta take some time to really reflect on all of this. So I don't mind it being 2 hours. I hope you didn't mind it being 2 hours either, Simone. This was a lot of fun for me. It was very productive, I feel, and I'm satisfied with the final product so far. I was kind of worried coming in that we weren't going to do it justice, but I think we did. I think I said all the things I wanted to say anyway, and so because because it was satisfying for me, I want to know, if there's anything you still want to you still want to add, if you have any questions that you wanted to bring into the discussion, if you had any insight that you wanted to address, if you want to comment, I'll give you, like at the end of every other episode, I want to give you this space now to say whatever it is that's on your mind, to do whatever. The floor is yours. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, thanks. I don't know what should I ask. I already asked the important question that I guess. But yeah, I think that I just realized that we cannot, we can it's not actually we cannot appreciate each character without comparing them to each other. For example, we at the end of this episode, I appreciate more the character of Hamlet, and also I appreciate the character of Macbeth. That is it. It's just each of them is both of them is significant for us. I guess that they portray a different story. We cannot appreciate more about. We can get into more about who is Macbeth really is if we didn't compare him to Hamlet, or get into him or introspect or articulate more about his character. So I guess that it's really important for us to compare these two characters. So that's what makes this episode really great. Because we compare Hamlet and Macbeth, we get into both of them. I get that we get the last episode about Hamlet. We didn't get into this much. I guess that at the end of this episode, we can say that we know more, or we get into more about Hamlet, and also maybe in the next episodes, I get that we can also articulate more about Macbeth. So yeah, that's a really great experience for me. So Yeah, yeah. I don't mind about this come to this long, but yeah, so far I guess today's one is a one great episode for me. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's the great thing about Shakespeare too. It's like you the further into the canon you get, the oeuvre you get, like the more there is to say because now you have frames of reference. Now you have examples. You can talk about different things. You can make those connections, and so if things keep going the way they are now, it'll be really interesting to see what the last episode looks like for this when we talk about everything at once. I feel like we're going to be enlightened. It's crazy, man. We're going to be like completely different people coming out of this than we were coming in. So I'm really excited. I'm really looking forward to seeing how that turns out. But yeah, it just is there anyone by the way, are there any other characters or any other plays you want to compare? You want to try to compare Macbeth or Hamlet to while we're still here? Do you want to try to connect it to like A Midsummer's Night or As You Like It? We already did As You Like It, but if you still want to talk about any of those, can you see any other obvious connections or maybe not so obvious connections? We might as well while we're still talking about it. Can you think of anything off the top of your head?
I don't know if this one is significant. I guess Richard II. I can compare him into the aspect of Macbeth that he lets his advisor to takes over him. He didn't let his own to think about more about his kingdom or he's in the throne. I guess he has the authority to think more about himself to be able to get the education but that he needed to improve his kingdom, but he didn't do that. He just let these people around here, his advisors, to uh, to dictate him to what he should do. I guess we can see that in the character of Macbeth, he just let his wife or the people around him to dictate him what to do, and then it ends up the wrong way. I guess that I just realized it that we shouldn't let other people to think for ourselves. I guess that at least we can get their opinions regarding things, but at least you need to at the end of the day you need to decide by yourself. So that's how I get it. Maybe you can articulate more regarding this comparison further than I did.
Yeah, I mean Richard II. Wow, yeah, I didn't even think about that, but that's you're spot on with it. Yeah, for sure. I mean, they're both he and Macbeth, Richard II and Macbeth are both bad kings. They both let themselves be influenced by those around them too much. They don't have enough willpower, But I think the main difference between them is, of course, the fact that Richard II, as lame a person as he is, and as terrible a leader as he was in the end, I don't think he's as malevolent as Macbeth. Macbeth, it's weird with Macbeth. It's like you barely even think of him as a king because he's not really a king. He's not. He doesn't deserve it, and he only really wants. He doesn't want to rule. He just wants to. Think about it this way: he doesn't want to govern. He wants to rule. He just wants to say that he's king. Really, it's very superficial. His reason for it. He just wants power. That's it. It's more It's more about domination than anything else. It's more about being able to sit there in that throne on that throne and say I am king, to be able to wear that crown and say I am king. Whereas with Richard II is just he's like a spoiled kid, He's like a spoiled little boy, who grew up he had everything handed to him. He had born with a silver spoon up his ass, That's the kind of person he is. He's more in the evil that comes with Richard II is more incompetence and it's both, but they're both passive is the thing. So that is common between the two of them. Passivity, evil through passivity. The fact that they're both passive is what leads them to evil. What leads them to temptation, I guess. And that's Richard II too. But he's a much milder Macbeth. Macbeth is an extreme example of evil through passivity. Richard II, he doesn't really know what he's doing. He's not malevolent, he's not necessarily malicious, but he's spoiled and he lets himself get tempted by complacency and the fact that he, again, spoiledness, I suppose, just being, in entitlement and just in laziness and incompetence. He just gives into all of it, but all three of these characters, all by the way, Hamlet, Macbeth, Richard II, they all have a scene. They all have a scene in a soliloquy where they regret the past and everything, where they muse on their predicament and how they're going to die. Richard II is in his prison cell in Pomfret, at the Pomfret, the castle in West Yorkshire, I believe. But yeah, they all have that in common, and they all make mistakes. Obviously, they're all tragic heroes in a sense. Even though, of course, Richard II is in his play as a history as opposed to a tragedy. That classification doesn't necessarily matter very much, but it's worth noting. But yeah, I just Richard II, he's sort of accidentally evil, but that's kind of the worst kind of evil. And so is Macbeth to a certain extent, but Macbeth has that malevolence. He has that maliciousness to him that I don't think Richard II has. And when Richard II gets fucked over, when he fucks himself over, rather, when everything falls apart, he realizes it, and I think I would send him to heaven, by the way, because I think he's recalcitrant, and I think even though he's a spoiled, he's like a spoiled rich kid or whatever, he didn't deserve to straight up die. That was an unpleasant, unfortunate series of events, and yeah, if any between Richard II and Henry IV, who kills him in the end, basically, and usurps him, dethrones him, and all that. I would say Macbeth and Henry IV have more in common because they're both conniving, contriving, machinating, Machiavellian figures. Richard II is like he's interesting. He's in between Hamlet and Macbeth. He's very mild. He's very passive, but I don't think he wasn't malicious. He wasn't evil. But he caused evil. He was a vessel for evil, but I don't think he was necessarily evil. Whereas Hamlet is a vessel for evil as well, but he means good. But he's good. He's just a corrupted version of good. His particular brand of justice is a corrupted form of justice. But there's still good there. And I think personally, Richard II is neutral between the two of them. He's not. I don't think there's really anything. The only good thing about him is that he genuinely loved his wife, the queen, the former queen. He genuinely loved her. He had affection for her. He cared about her. That's about the only good thing That's about the only good thing aspect to his personality. Because again, that play it's a history. It's not necessarily a moral play. So Shakespeare doesn't delve too deep into that. But yeah, I would say he's ultimately Richard II's more neutral. Hamlet they're all evil, I would say, to a certain degree. If we look at them all as villains, perhaps paradoxically, Hamlet is the good villain. He's a good evil. If you're familiar with D&D alignment, let me try to pull that up real quick. A D&D alignment chart just to try to better explain this. I would say Hamlet is a lawful evil. Hamlet is a lawful evil. Fuck, wait, I had a point here, but I actually don't think that's right. I was going to say that they were all, hold on. But no, Hamlet is definitely a lawful evil. That I can confirm. But I would say, you know what? Richard II is a chaotic neutral. He's a chaotic neutral because he's a mess as a leader. He doesn't know what he's doing, and he fucks up, and yeah. But then Macbeth, I don't know if he's a chaotic evil or a neutral evil, but I think he's both. But I think he's more neutral evil. And so if you guys don't know what all these terms mean, I will try to pull up the definitions for them real quick to make it a bit easier to understand. But essentially, neutral evil means like pure evil. So Hamlet is pure evil. Let me try to pull up that list real quick. Simone, talk me through some of your thoughts about this while I try to figure this out real quick. Tell me what your perspective is.
Yeah, I agree with that. Regarding about the Richard II, I can see he done some evil, but he's not evil at all compared to if we were going to compare him to Macbeth, because Macbeth, we can say that Macbeth is a pure evil for everything that he's done. I guess that Richard II is a bit. We can say that he's more positive outlook at he dwells into positive. I guess his character is not depressing that at all. I guess I didn't see him as depressive into compared to the Hamlet and Macbeth. Macbeth is really depressing, and yeah, yeah. I guess Hamlet is. I think he's the best. He's the best definition of a villain. I guess. He's the best villain. I guess that he's balanced. He's neutral about things. So yeah, he done a lot of evil things, but he's also we can learn a lot from him of him being an evil rather than compared to he's a good evil compared to Macbeth. Macbeth is really bad evil, a pure evil. That we can get into some lessons from him, but Hamlet has done more. We can get more tons of lessons from Hamlet than than Macbeth. But we can to be honest, we can get into the conclusion that the Hamlet is a better one if we didn't compare these characters. Yeah. So Richard II, in the other hand, is just neutral at all. That he's just in between the line of these two. She's just lying the more positive side. He's not a big deal when we talk about the relatings into evil. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah. I actually, I don't, I just realized the definitions for the D&D alignment thing, Dungeons and Dragons alignment thing. It doesn't really have anything to do with this. It's kind of it oversimplifies it a bit too much. I don't think you could put any of these characters into any of those like into one category. And it's kind of it's not it doesn't work for what we're talking about here. So let's just forget about that. Sorry, but yeah. So Simone, to end this episode, this very long episode, twice as long as anything we've ever done before, really, or half an hour long than anything we've ever done before. Have your ratings regarding the play and the regarding the particular production of the play or the production and the play. Have your ratings changed from the beginning of the episode, or do you stand by what you had earlier?
Yeah, I guess for the play, I guess I'll stick to my ratings that it would be an 8.5 for me. And then the adaptation play it's an 8.5, and the actual play itself, I guess I lowered it up. I guess I gave it a 10 earlier, so maybe I'll for now I give it uh, a 9.5, I guess. Because comparing this one to Hamlet, I guess that I appreciate more Hamlet rather than this one. I get a lot of introspection regarding with the help of this play, but yeah, I appreciate more Hamlet than this one. But it's also important to me that that I will not I cannot we cannot appreciate more Hamlet if we didn't see this one. Yeah, it's a great experience.
And you still think Hamlet's the best Shakespeare play you've seen so far? Because I do, and that's why I gave that one a 10.
Yeah, I do. That's the best one, I guess, that we have seen so far. I really like that one.
Yeah, and eventually, once we watch all of them, we can edit our ratings and stuff. We'll put them all on the list and everything. That'll be a whole episode in and of itself, and we'll just discuss the reasons why we do that and all that. But yeah, for now, I still stand by what I say. This particular adaptation, I give it an 8 out of 10. I think it was solid technically, and it was enjoyable, perfectly enjoyable. But just it was only until I got into the research and everything that I really kind of appreciated it all. The play, just seeing it isn't enough. I wouldn't say. You have to do research. You have to look into it a little more. You have to spend some time with this one. This is, as you can tell, over 2 hours in. Macbeth is definitely it's a Shakespeare play that you got to spend a lot of time with. But as far as I would rate the original play, I would give it a definitely still a 9 out of 10. Just for now. I don't know if it could elevate itself to a 9.75 eventually, but just for now, I'm going to be safe, and I'm just going to go with a 9 out of 10 just to be general and vague about it, to leave space for maybe even better works and stuff. That's the hope, is that, I'm being optimistic about it. The hope is that I find one that's even better than this, because this is really good, but like it could be even better, and yeah, Hamlet's still a 10 out of 10 for me, without a doubt. The best one we've seen so far. And hopefully we come close to it, but I honestly don't think we'll get as good as Hamlet. I think Hamlet really is Shakespeare's apotheosis, and I have a lot of fun with it. And I'm fine with that, too, because it so far it's my favorite, absolutely, without a doubt. But yeah, so on to the Would You Rather now, because, after all this, we still have to end each episode with a Would You Rather. It is Imperial Tide's tradition now, 10 episodes in. So Simone, answer me this. Would you rather have all traffic lights you approach? Okay, so when you're driving, would you rather have all the traffic lights that you approach turn green, so that you never have to worry about, stopping and getting clogged in traffic and stuff? Or, so that's the first option. Or would you rather never have to stand in line again? What are your thoughts on that? Which one's better? Which one would you go with, personally?
I don't know. I guess to be honest, I haven't encountered this much in our area to stand that much, or the traffic lights. There's very rare. There's only, I guess, 4 to 5 traffic lights around the city. So I guess that I don't know which will I choose. Maybe I'll choose no longer standing in line, I guess. I guess it's already pointless for me to choose the.
No, go ahead. You can go ahead. It's pointless for you to because I guess that doesn't apply to you, because you're in a different kind of world or whatever. And I don't know. Well, world's a bit dramatic of a term, but things are different where you in your little corner of the globe or whatever. I would probably go with because again I don't drive either, so but I feel like driving would suck, and driving is something you have to do more than standing in line. Well, it's actually I picked this. I thought this was going to be an easy one, but I'm actually kind of having a hard time with it. I would do standing in line though, because of amusement parks. Disneyland, Disney World, the DMV. That's not an amusement park, but it sucks to have to stand in line at the fucking DMV, at the doctors, at the emergency room too. If I get fucked up, I can go straight to the front of the line at the emergency room and get fixed right away. If I had to stand in line, I might lose the eye or whatever. Whatever the fucking situation is. But yeah, I don't know. Probably standing in line. That's what I would go with, and you would go with that too. Is there anything else you want to talk about, or it might be too loud over there? But is there anything else you want to say before we close? I know this was a really long one. I kind of want to close it now. So if you want to, but if you still want to talk, feel free. Anything else?
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I choose the more standing in line, because I think this one is more significant for me. I guess that it's the more important one. I guess I don't drive at all, or I know there's no much I can do with the traffic around here. So yeah, maybe I can use it on the amusement parks. I guess that it takes too long, about an hour or two during when you go to amusement parks around here. So yeah, I think that's all we need to end this episode. It's already around 2 hours long.
Yep. And then the good thing about there's actually some benefits to sitting in traffic as well. The good thing about being stuck in traffic is that you can listen to things to pass. You can do anything to pass time. You can listen to things, music, or podcasts like this, podcasts like the Imperial Tides podcast. You can put an episode of that on in traffic and listen to the two of us, rant about, rant and ramble about Shakespeare for an hour and a half, or 2 hours in this case, or more than 2 hours, maybe 3 hours eventually. We'll see. Who knows what the future has in store for us, but with that being said, this has been episode 10 of the Imperial Tides podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please do feel free leave a thumbs up on the video, subscribe for more content. We do new videos every week. Share this with your friends, get the word out, tell everybody so we can all have some weird party, on the internet someday. And or, maybe in real life once this COVID thing's done, we can have Imperial Tides fan club, meetups and all that, and reunions eventually 50 years down the line. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. Have a nice rest of your day. Subscribe for more content. Do everything. Have fun. Stay tuned for more Shakespeare. It's been tough, but we're gonna push through. We're gonna get through all 44 of his main works eventually. It's gonna be a really long time before that happens, but we will do it. And bye for now.